Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for holding. Your lines have been placed on a listen-only mode until the question and answer portion of today's conference. During that question and answer session, you can press star, then 1 on your touchtone phone to ask any questions. Please be sure your phone line is unmuted and state your name at the prompt so we can announce your name prior to you asking your question. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. And I'd like to turn our call over today to our first speaker, Ms. Amanda Klimek. Ma'am, you may begin.
All right, thank you. And good afternoon to everyone joining us for our webinar on how to use the American Community Survey's Public Use Microdata Sample, or PUMS files. My name is Amanda Klimek, and I work with the American Community Survey Office's Outreach and Education branch. And if you'd like to follow along with our webinar today, we have posted the slides online on our census.gov/ACS page for this webinar, and a recording and transcript will be posted on our website within the next few weeks. Please note that that there have been a couple of different phone numbers that have gone out. Hopefully, if you are listening to this right now, you are listening to the correct one, but the corrected one is posted on your screen. Okay. Before I delve into the webinar today, I'd like to start with an overview of the Census Bureau, including some things even seasoned census enthusiasts might not know. We're one of the largest of the 17 federal government statistical agencies, and during the decennial census, we are the second largest employer in the United States. While most people are familiar with the decennial census that happens every 10 years, we also conduct more than 100 censuses and surveys of households and businesses across the nation each year. This includes the American Community Survey, or ACS, and more than 30 other household surveys and over 60 economic programs. So based on previous feedback of our webinars we've had in the past, we've heard that users consistently want new and different ways to access our data. With that in mind, we want to take this opportunity to show you an exciting new tool we have on data.census.gov to create custom tabulations using PUMS data. If you previously used Identifier, which is no longer being updated or maintained, this is kind of the successor, if you will, and Identifier will be decommissioned later this year. So we'll start by going over some of the basics to get you familiar with the ACS and the PUMS. And then we'll go over PUMS Geography, specifically focusing on public use microdata areas, or PUMAs, and how to find them. We'll then do a couple of demos on both accessing the data through our FTP site and creating custom tables on data.census.gov. We'll then look at some of the resources for finding out more and leave you with some ways you can reach out for help with the survey, as well as how to get involved with the ACS community. Finally, we'll leave some room at the end for questions. So the American Community Survey, or ACS, is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics such as age, children, veterans, commuting, education, income, and employment. The survey samples approximately 3.5 million addresses. These data are collected continuously throughout the year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates. The ACS is also used to distribute more than $675 billion of federal government spending each year. These estimates cover more than 40 topics and support more than 300 known federal uses and countless non-federal uses. Businesses and communities use these estimates to make vital decisions, including where to locate hospitals and schools, what transportation needs exist, and what goods and services businesses should provide to customers. We release 3 different sets of pre-tabulated estimates each year in the form of 1-year and 5-year period estimates, as well as 1-year supplemental estimates. The content collected by the American Community Survey can be grouped into 4 main characteristics: social, economic, housing, and demographic. You can see some of the social characteristics here listed on the left, including popular topics such as disability and educational attainment. The American Community Survey also collects basic demographic characteristics such as age, Hispanic origin, race, relationship, and sex. This is the same information collected on the decennial census. Economic characteristics below include topics such as income, employment status, and the others you see here. Housing characteristics listed on the right include both the physical and financial characteristics of housing, such as year build and home value. Each question on the ACS is required for federal and state government programs. We provide a resource on the ACS website called the Why We Ask page, which gives a public information case on the required use cases for why these questions are asked, as well as how they appear on the questionnaire. Now it's time to get into the basics of the public use microdata sample, or PUMS, which is why we are here today. ACS data products are released about 1 year after the data are collected. The PUMS is a publicly available subsample of ACS records. 1 year PUMS estimates are a subsample of data collected over a calendar year and constitute approximately 1% of all U.S. households in total, whereas the 5 year PUMS combines data collected over 60 months and constitute approximately 5% of all U.S. households. The planned release date for the 2019 ACS 1 year PUMS is October 15th, 2020, and the planned release date of the 2015 to 2019 ACS 5 year PUMS is January 14th, 2021. Additional restrictions are added to protect data confidentiality in the PUMS, such as including broader categories of data or grouping together extreme values in the form of top and bottom coding. PUMS files allow data users to calculate their own estimates, and MOEs may not be available on data.census.gov. And just so you know, MOEs are margins of error, and we'll go over those a little bit in a moment. So generally, statistical software is recommended when working with PUMS data, and unless you are working with our Microdata Access tool on data.census.gov, which we'll go over here in a little bit. But if you're already familiar with the ACS program and its data, you know that we meet many of the needs of data users, but not all of them. So for example, consider this table on your screen, which is titled Detailed Occupation for the Full-Time, Year-Round, Civilian Employed Female Population, 16 years and over. And every word of that table title gives us little information. To create every estimate in this table, we use responses from a combination of 6 different questions on the ACS that ask about occupation, employment status, weeks worked, hours worked, sex, and age. However, you may be interested in data for a different population or at a different level of detail than what you see here. The Census Bureau produces these PUMS files precisely so that data users with varying needs have the ability to conduct their own analyses. Specifically, the PUMS allows you to create custom tables to get a greater level of detail than what the standard tables offer, create new variables using unique combinations of person and/or household variables, and conduct sophisticated statistical analyses that allow you to analyze the relationship between variables. So let's recap a little here with an example of this microdata and what makes it different from the summary data you might see in data.census.gov or other sources. In these summary tables, such as the one shown on top, individual records are categorized and weighted to create an estimate for the larger population. For this example, the statisticians at the Census Bureau have taken the records of all respondents living in Louisiana who indicated that a male in their household works in a computer and mathematical occupation, grouped them together, and weighted them to create an estimate of all males in Louisiana working in this occupation category. These statisticians have also calculated and provided the margin of error for this estimate. By contrast, the microdata below provides a sample of those records that the statisticians used. Here, you can see that one person who responded to the ACS in Louisiana is a male web developer. To create an estimate, the data user must take this raw data and follow the same steps that the statisticians did in the example above. As I mentioned in the previous slide, PUMS data provide individual records that data users must aggregate to form estimates. Unlike on data.census.gov, there are no pre-tabulated data. Weights are included on the PUMS files so that data users may create weighted population estimates. If you are working with housing records, you will use the housing weights, and if you're working with person records, you will use the person weights. Replicate weights, those numbered 1 through 80, are used for calculating replicate estimates needed to calculate standard errors. From then on, standard errors using the replicate weights are necessary in order to calculate the associated margins of error, or MOEs. And on that note, we love it when you use MOEs. MOEs allow data users to be certain that at a given level of confidence, the estimate and the actual population value differ by no more than the value of the MOE. Put simply, the MOE is a measure of the possible variation of an estimate around the population value. The Census Bureau uses a 90% confidence interval as the standard in all published tables. And if you follow us closely, you might have tuned into this, but if not, we just had an informative webinar on how to calculate MOEs using PUMS data last month on February 12th. You can find the recorded webinar and associated transcript on Census Academy's recorded webinar page, which is linked on this slide. It's down there at the bottom. So you can definitely find that on Census Academy. So as I just mentioned earlier, the 5-year PUMS is the equivalent of 5 one-year PUMS files. So it includes about 5% of all U.S. households. So the question is, why would you wait until January for the 5-year PUMS when you could just merge the 5 most recent one-year files in October? The short answer is yes, you can merge the files on your own if you want to. But we do some of the nice standardizations for the 5-year PUMS that might be worth waiting for. For example, new weights are produced for these records so that the weighted population matches the latest population estimate. Dollar amounts have an adjustment factor to standardize them to the latest year so that no one is comparing varying levels of inflation. Other coding schemes are updated, such as ancestry and occupation, so you don't have to recode those yourself. If you're interested in an example of how PUMS can be used in action, you can visit an interactive data visualization we released last year on young adults in higher education. We used the PUMS rather than our internal microdata to showcase the sophistication of what can be done using the PUMS. We went through the same steps that any data user would to aggregate the data and calculate the associated MOEs using replicate weights. The result showed an interesting story on what degrees young adults are getting and what those degrees are doing for them in terms of occupation and earnings. And this is not an analysis that could have been done using only our existing tables. So now that we've covered some of the basics, we can delve into the PUMS geography a little more, which might be a little different than the type of geography that you're used to. To ensure the confidentiality of ACS respondents, the Census Bureau has to balance geographic detail with detail in the data. And there are more than 250 variables on a single PUMS person record. This means that we cannot identify as many small geographies in the PUMS as users might hope. So we can put the region, division, and state on the file, but the only other geography is something we call a public use microdata area, or PUMA. PUMS is not designed for statistical analysis of small geographic areas, but the PUMAs can still be used for focused analyses in counties and cities of 100,000 plus people, as well as many metro areas. And I'll show an example of this shortly. But first, we'll discuss the basics of PUMAs. PUMAs are areas with a population of at least 100,000, which is large enough to meet disclosure avoidance requirements. PUMAs are identified by 5-digit codes, which are unique within each state. These geographies are redefined after each decennial census and are defined by either the State Data Center or, in some cases, the Census Bureau's regional geography staff. For example, PUMAs redefined after the 2010 census were first used in the 2012 PUMS files. And as with many geographic concepts, seeing PUMAs on a map may help you understand them better. So you can see the 2 maps on the right are shown at the same scale. And you can see most of the PUMAs in Wyoming are larger than the PUMAs in New Jersey. This emphasizes that PUMAs are truly built based on population and not on geographic size. I want to take a second to highlight 2 tools that can help you determine what PUMAs you might need. The first is from the Missouri Census Data Center, which has a fantastic geographic correspondence engine that you can use to match PUMAs to other geographic levels of interest, which is one way to figure out which PUMAs you might need. And another way is to use the Census Bureau application TigerWeb. This is a web-based application which helps you drill down and physically see which PUMS correspond to which levels of geography. This screenshot shows a part of the greater DC metro area, and we'll explore this on the live application in just a moment. As we can see, the District of Columbia has a large population and consists of several PUMS, and you would aggregate those PUMS to get data for the District of Columbia. Most of the surrounding counties are also large enough to consist of several PUMS, which can be used to approximate the county. And the primary difficulties occur when we get farther away from urban centers to counties with smaller populations, which are then combined with other counties to make PUMS. And this causes it to become less feasible to be able to infer data about the individual county. And furthermore, while I'm showing examples of PUMS adhering to county boundaries, it's not necessarily a requirement that PUMS be designed this way, although it is recommended. And here, I'll take you to the live TigerWeb application really quick. So you'll start by going to tigerweb.geo.census.gov, which was shown on the slide. Again, the slides will be posted after a couple weeks after the webinar for those who might need the link. The slides are available now. The recorded webinar will include the slides, and all the links will be available there if you want to refer back to these. So you'll go to tigerweb.geo.census.gov, and then you will click here on TigerWeb Applications. And once you do that, in the interest of time, I have it already pulled up in a tab here, so we save on loading time. And then you will click on TigerWeb. Also, in the interest of time, I've pulled it up in a new tab here. So we have the application open, and we're going to go into the same area that we saw here on the screenshot. And I always recommend zooming into the area you want first before clicking on any of the options on the left, because they will show at a closer, they won't show up until you zoom in a little closer. So we're going to zoom into DC here. And once we're in, you can see that we can click on, zoom out a little bit, you can click on this area over here on the left that says PUMS, UGAs, and ZICTAs. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, ZICTA is zip code tabulation area. And since we're only interested in PUMS right now, we're going to clean up this map a little bit by expanding this category and unchecking the 2010 census zip code tabulation areas and only leaving the PUMS. So here, you'll be able to see what PUMS correspond to what areas. And here we have the counties already loaded. And so you can see a little bit of what I was talking about here. Here, the District of Columbia is made up of several PUMS, and many of these counties that surround the DC area, which are rather large in population size, are made up of several PUMS. Something interesting I'll do here, which I had on the screenshot, was I want to highlight the places and county subdivisions. I'm going to do the same thing. We want to just specify places here. So we're going to uncheck all of these. We're just going to have incorporated places checked. And that's where you can see Alexandria right here is an interesting case. It happens every now and then, which you do get cases where you do get a place, like a recognizable place, or a county. Alexandria in this case is the county equivalent, which Alexandria is its own PUMA just because the population size happens to correspond. But Arlington County, which is right next door, is a larger county and is made up of two PUMAs. So we're going to zoom out a little bit, and we'll go out this way a little bit. We're going to go a little farther out from the urban center. And as we go out here, you can start to see a larger PUMA that is made up of several counties. So this is how you can kind of start to see what I was talking about in the slide earlier, the screenshot. So now that you know about PUMS data, we can start to look into ways to access it. The most common way to access PUMS data for use with statistical software is through our File Transfer Protocol, or FTP site. And this slide highlights the steps you will take to download the PUMS file from the FTP site. You will navigate to the PUMS data page on census.gov/ACS, and then select the year you want from the FTP column on the left. Then you will decide whether you want the 1-year or 5-year data set. From there, you'll see a list of files with a naming convention that identifies whether the file is in CSV or Unix format. And Unix format will just basically get you if you're using like SAS or something like that. Whether it is then you'll check whether it is a housing or population file, and then you'll decide whether you want a file for the U.S. or for an individual state. And I'm going to walk through this with you real quick. So again, in the interest of saving time, I will show you where to click. I already have them pulled up in tabs here so that we save on loading time. So you'll go to the census.gov/ACS website. So if you just type in census.gov/ACS, it will take you to our main page. From here, you'll click on Data. And from here, you'll click on PUMS Data. And after you go into PUMS Data, you'll go to this PUMS Data page. And we have on the left here, in the left column, you'll get the data sets ready in the format for statistical analyses in statistical software, CSV format, generally what you're used to. Here on the right, we have PUMS on data.census.gov, which is through our new Microdata Access tool, which I will do a demo on in a little bit here, but that's the difference between these two columns. So today we're just going to stick with the 2018 1 year. So we're just going to go into 2018. We're going to go into 1 year. And so you see there's a file naming convention here. So you just start from left to right making your decision. You decide if you want the CSV or you decide if you want the Unix file. And after that, you decide if you want, we're going to stick with CSV. We're going to decide if we want the housing or person. So if we wanted a housing file, we would stick with H. If we wanted a person file, we would stick with P. We're going to stick with the CSV person file. So next we want the geographic level. So say, you wanted Colorado, you would be CSV_P co.zip. I want the national file today. So I am going to go find CSV_P and then US. So we're going to see it right here. So and then you would just click on that to download. And in the interest of saving time, I have already downloaded it. But so you would download it as a zip file, and then once you download it as a zip file, you would just unzip it to whichever location you want. And if you get lost at any point, we have a PUMS file naming convention PDF at the top here, and you can go into that, and that will help you navigate the file naming convention. So you're going to go back here. And this just basically shows you, if you're looking through the slides later, we've kind of highlighted exactly where all this information is located. So if you get lost at any point, you can always return to that PUMS naming convention file. So now we're going to have a short demo on the brand new way to access PUMS data, which is through the Microdata Access tool on data.census.gov. And this is the method that requires no knowledge of statistical software and able to create your own, in order to create your own custom tables. So once again, we're going to go to our browser here. We're at data.census.gov, and again, in the interest of saving time on loading, I've uploaded everything in tabs, but you would scroll down a little bit, and you would scroll down to where you see microdata here, and you can click on Explore Microdata. And this would take you to this data.census.gov/MDAT. And here you're going to see a section where you can select your data set and your vintage. And by vintage, we're just talking about which year the PUMS files you want. So you can see here, you can see the 1 year and 5 year data sets, the Puerto Rico public use microdata sample. We're just going to stick with the 1 year today, and we're going to stick with the 2018 again. And then you would click Next. And here is our brand new exciting tool. This is our variable selection page. And I want to take a second here to kind of talk about our PUMS technical documentation as well. And I'm going to go through this in a later slide. You would find this on the census.gov/ACS website that I was just on earlier, and you would find it under technical documentation and then under PUMS technical documentation. And I will have a link on a slide in a little bit here. but I have this loaded up here. So if you want to get familiar with any of our variables and how they're coded and what the definitions of the variables are, you can go into our PUMS data dictionary and be able to explore the variables and what they mean and what the codes are. So here you can, once you've decided what your variables are, today we're going to take a look at the construction industry, just because it's not something I know a whole lot about. Maybe I want to do a little analysis on it. So we're going to see we're going to take a look and see where the occupation variable we want is. So I just found this by searching. I generally knew that there was I knew that there was a variable with the labels of occupation. So I searched for occupation, and this brought up this ocp variable. So here on the left, I'm just going to check this, and it is now added to our selection. So that is one way you can search for variables in the Microdata Access tool, is through this label filter. You can just search for that. You can also, if you already know the variable name, you can just search for the variable name. So I want to figure out occupation data by sex. So I am going to go ahead and click on that and say I want to look at the average age or different age groups. I'm going to go ahead and click on this age variable as well. So those three variables are now, as you can see, added to my data cart. So I am going to be looking at those three variables in the table that I produced. Up here, you can see that there was what looked like a warning message that came up. So that is just age as a continuous variable, and we'll kind of see what that means in a moment. That's just saying that that can only be in the values field. So we'll take a look at that because we're going to manipulate age a little bit. So then we can go to our next tab up here and select our geography. So at the moment, we're going to go with state, and we're going to go down. Let's see. We're gonna go for Pennsylvania today. I'm going to click on Pennsylvania. If you don't select a geography, it will default to the U.S., just like in general on data.census.gov. So we're going to go to our data cart. At this point, I do want to keep in mind that this is a beta version of this tool. So we will be rolling out various updates to it. And we have a couple of our technical staff here today to answer some questions that you might have on the rollout of this tool. So I am going to go ahead and look at this occupation variable, ocp. And of course, I don't necessarily want every single occupation in my analysis. I just want to look at the construction industry. And so I'm going to take out all the variables and just search for the ones I want. And there's actually a reason that I search for occupation rather than industry, because I noticed there's a couple of construction occupations that overlap industries. For instance, I wanted to take a look at construction managers, and that is under the manager occupation code. So I'm going to take a look at construction managers. I'm going to take a look at construction laborers and construction equipment operators. So those are now in my analysis. And at this point, you can click on table layout. This is going to show you what the table is going to look like. You can manipulate what's going to be the columns and rows, but you can also do that once you view the table. So we're going to go ahead and view the table. We're going to trust the tool for now. So as you can see, the occupations are laid out nicely in the rows, and the sex is laid out in the columns here. And you will see that it already weighted it for us on the PUMS, based on the PUMS person weight. We can see that it's Pennsylvania, and we can see that the values in the table cells are the average of each. So it took this continuous variable and it made a summary statistic of the average. So this is, this gets us started on our analysis. And with this, we have this age variable in here. What if we wanted to take a look at a certain age group? So, say we want to take a look at age 18 to 34. So I'll go back here to show you what I did. I just went ahead and clicked on to get to this, to edit the variables, I just went ahead and clicked on the variable. So that's what I'm going to do. I clicked on the variable, and I'm going to create a custom group here. And I'm going to call this group 18 to 34. So we're going to look at the construction industry, ages 18 to 34 here. So there's two ways you can create this. So you can use this little slider here, and I will do that here. On this side, I'm just going to go ahead and type it in. So we have this 18 to 34 age group here. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So we have this age group, and then we have this not elsewhere classified, because the remainder of those responses and all of the other categories of age have to be somewhere. So they are going to be in this not elsewhere classified. We're not really interested in all of the other age groups right now, because that's not what we're analyzing at the moment. So we're going to uncheck show on table. So we're not going to include that in our analysis at this time. At this point, if you wanted to delete our old age variable, you could, but as you can see, we have this new age recode down at the bottom. So we created a whole new variable. So we're going to take a look at, you need to save our changes first. Okay. Okay, saving our changes. And now we can view our table. And you'll see it doesn't automatically put our new variable in our analysis here. But say we want to bring it in. I'm just going to add it up here. This is our age recode. Right here, and I'm just going to add it to, I'm just going to add it up here to the columns. So now we can see that in the columns, we have a cross tabulation. We have male and female, and this is all done within the age groups of 18 to 34. And now we can also look at, we can see the average age, but that's only between the ages of 18 and 34. So that's not really as interesting as it was. So we're going to, instead of that, we're going to look at the count of people in Pennsylvania, male and female, who work in these sectors, and this is just ages 18 to 34. So now we're getting a little bit more of an interesting analysis. So to download or share this table, we can go to more table options, and we have a couple of options here actually. So you can download the table as a CSV, or you can also share these links. If you were to share this first link, it would send, you could send it to a colleague, and it would send this table in the data.census.gov tool exactly as you made it. So they would be looking at the same table that we created on the Microdata Access tool. And here we have, if you are interested in working through our API, we do have this data available in our API now. So I went ahead and loaded these. So this is the exact same table, and this is the raw data. These are the records that we use, the individual records that we use to create this table. So this is that exact same link, and it will just bring us the raw data that we use to create this table. But if we want to see the tabulated version in the API, we can use this bottom one here, and I have pulled that up right there. So we will get back to the rest of our presentation. All right, so finally, we would like to share some ways for you to reach out and stay in touch. Much of the information that you heard today can be found in our upcoming handbook, Understanding and Using American Community Survey Public Use Microdata Sample Files, What Data Users Need to Know. And this is a part of a series of data user handbooks that's currently being updated on our website. We've recently released versions of this handbook for general data users, state and local governments, businesses, and more. Our general handbook, What All Data Users Need to Know, includes step-by-step case studies from the City of New Orleans, the Atlanta Regional Commission, and the Housing Assistance Council. And all of our handbooks can be found at this link listed below, or by going to census.gov/ACS, and then guidance for data users, and then handbooks. Our developers have also released a step-by-step guide to using the Microdata Access tool that we demonstrated today. If you'd like to reference the guide in order to find out more tips and tricks and conduct your own analysis at your own pace, you can find the full guide at the link below. If you navigate to census.gov/ACS and click on Technical Documentation and then PUMS Documentation, you'll find general information about PUMS, confidentiality, FAQs, file structure, and the Microdata Access tool, as well as other information. So this is what I showed you earlier with the data dictionary. Again, you'll just navigate census.gov/ACS, and then you'll go to Technical Documentation, PUMS Documentation, or you can just follow this link at the bottom of the slide. And this is where you'll find all these resources listed for each data year. On that note, if you do end up using ACS data to create real outcomes in your community or business, we want to hear about it through our Share Your Story feature. That way we can share it with others like we did today to show people how important the data is and everything you can do with it. Sign up for and manage alerts on ACS news and events such as conferences and webinars via GovDelivery, visit our website, or connect on social media using the hashtag ACSData. For support, you can reach out to us at acso.users.support@census.gov. And if you end up using ACS data for any cool PUMS uses or otherwise, make sure to source us. It helps people figure out where they can get the detailed information that we're giving you today. So thanks for joining our webinar today. At this point, I'll ask the operator to open up the line for questions.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, if you would like to ask any questions, please press star, then 1 on your your phone keypad. Again, that is star, then 1 on your phone keypad. Be sure your phone line is unmuted and state your name at the prompt so we can announce your name prior to you asking your question. And your first question, your line is open, sir.
Hi, good morning, or afternoon, I guess, on the East Coast. Could you elaborate more on the accuracy, precision, and or generalizability of the PUMS data? Since I believe in one of the slides you said this is a sample of the ACS, which is a sample. For example, if the place geography is the same as the PUMA geography, would the statistics from a pre-created table available on data.census.gov be different from a user-calculated table of the same data using PUMS data?
All right, so that's actually a great question. And generally our guidance is that the estimates will likely be different, and the difference will not be horribly meaningful. So we still stand by providing the highest quality estimates. So as I like to say, and as you might hear in a statistics class, it's different but not meaningful. So if you're interested in a little bit more about this, you can. I'm going to take us back to the ACS website real quick, and let's see. You can actually conduct your own when you're conducting your analyses. Since the estimates are different and you can't necessarily match them to the pre-tabulated estimates to see the accuracy of the program you might be using. We're going to take a look here. We actually have estimates that our statisticians calculate using the PUMS, so you can try to match your estimates to theirs and see if your program's working correctly. Documentation. So this will be on the PUMS technical documentation page. This is the page that I've been talking about, of the data dictionary. You can, if you're interested in the methodology more, you can take a look at the accuracy of the PUMS, but this is what I'm talking about here, the estimates for user verification, and these just have a sample, I'd say, of popular estimates that our statisticians calculate ourselves and publish ourselves. So these are like our official PUMS estimates that you can try to match yours to. And again, you can create nearly countless PUMS estimates, so these are by no means all-inclusive, but these are just, to try to figure out if you're, if you're following along at home like you're expecting.
Your next question, your line is open.
Hi, yes, I just was asking or wanted to know if the state-level data sets are different in any way from the national data sets that are available through the FTP. So would the same information be in that all-inclusive national data set, or would there be some kind of difference between the state-level and national level one?
So I believe they are the same. I can check with our mathematical statisticians just to make sure that they don't do any different weighting or anything. If you'd like to send that question to our user support email, I will be able to see it and get back to you on that. I believe the files are the same. I just want to check with our math stats to make sure there's no weighting differences or anything.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And your next question, if your line is open.
Hello. I was wondering if margins of error were in this data set on the new data.census.gov microdata. I was also wondering about it stating that it's a beta version, so is there anything cautionary we should know about since it's still in beta?
So for this question, I'm going to bring in one of the outreach specialists for our development area for data.census.gov who might be able to speak to this better. So this is Tyson Weister from our data.census.gov team.
Hi there. Thank you for your question. So in terms of our margins of error on the version of data.census.gov/MDAT, the answer to that is no. But part of what it means to be a beta functionality is that it was recently rolled out and we're continuing to develop it based on user feedback. So we're taking things that we hear from users, like wanting to have margins of error on the site, as well as other additional functionality that we just wanted to give folks a little bit more time to have on their hands and work through and tell us how we can make it better.
Thank you.
And your next question, your line is open.
Yes, hi. I have a question about the 5-year files, 5-year PUMS files.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any differences between the user download 5-year PUMS files versus the 5-year PUMS files on the data.census.gov? If there are, what are the differences?
The 5-year files, so the files that are loaded onto data.census.gov are the same files that you would download yourself. So they load it in using the same metadata, it's pretty much all this. It's all the same as, yeah. So there's no difference.
I just noted something that I can find on the data.census.gov with the 5-year files versus the files that I can download. That is the county identifier. It's not in the user download file. Is that right?
There shouldn't. So we don't have counties in the PUMS files, so there shouldn't be a county identifier anyway. So you would have the PUMAs, which I believe are now available on data.census.gov. The PUMAs are now available, so you'll be able to find the PUMAs in the user files and on data.census.gov.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Again, if you would like to ask any questions, please press star, then 1 on your phone's keypad.
So while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I want to remind everyone that there's a group specifically for users of ACS data. This group allows data users to share how they're using the data and to solicit advice and feedback on their ideas. So membership's free and is open to all interested ACS data users. And more info can be found at acsdatacommunity.prb.org listed at the bottom of the screen.
currently, ma'am, we are showing no questions on the queue.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, if anybody has any more questions after the webinar, feel free to send them to our acso.users.support@census.gov. Before we go, I just want to point out we have these data dissemination specialists, or DDSs, who can help you conduct one-on-one webinars with businesses or startups, or conduct large-scale presentations with universities. They provide a wide variety of assistance, and if you're interested in a specific type of training or presentation, please reach out to a specialist in your area using the contact information in the slide. And here's a list of our upcoming webinars as well as some of our recent webinars. But yeah, thanks for joining today, and we appreciate you calling in, and let us know if you come up with any more questions.
Thank you, ma'am. This ends today's conference. You may disconnect at this time. Have a good day.